Have you ever heard a story so strange it had to be true? Imagine a big, important university. It is a place filled with smart professors and serious students. This university has a rule book, a student handbook. It tells students how to act. And one of the most serious rules is about plagiarism. Plagiarism is a fancy word for copying someone else's work. The handbook says, "Do not copy." It warns students that they will be in big trouble if they do. It is a very clear and very strict rule. The university wants its students to have integrity and to be honest in all their work. Now here is where the story gets interesting. A graduate student was looking at this handbook. He was thinking about becoming a teaching assistant there. He read the section on plagiarism very carefully. Something about the words seemed familiar. He had seen them before, so he did a little digging. He looked at the handbook from another university, and what did he find? The two sections were exactly the same, word for word. The university that was telling its students not to copy had copied its rule against copying. It was quite a discovery. The very institution that demanded originality from its students was guilty of the exact same offense. The irony is almost too much to believe. It is like a firefighter getting caught playing with matches, or a dentist who never brushes his own teeth. The university held up a high standard for others. It pointed a stern finger at any student who might dare to present someone else's ideas as their own. Yet in the background, it had done the very thing it condemned. The news spread and people shook their heads. How could an institution that is supposed to be a beacon of learning and ethics make such a mistake? It was a perfect real-life example of a simple truth. It is much easier to make rules for others than to follow them ourselves. This situation reveals a common human weakness. We can be very good at spotting the faults in other people. We see their mistakes with perfect clarity. We are quick to judge and quick to criticize. But when it comes to our own lives, our vision suddenly becomes blurry. We make excuses for ourselves. We justify our actions. We tell ourselves that our situation is different. The university probably had a reason. Maybe they were in a hurry. Maybe they thought it was a standard rule that everyone used. But the simple fact remains, they said one thing and did another. They failed to practice what they preached. This tendency to see the flaws in others while ignoring our own is not new. It is as old as humanity itself. We seem to have a built-in radar for detecting the mistakes of our friends, our family, and even strangers. We see the person who cuts in line at the grocery store, and we get angry. We hear about a politician who broke a promise and we feel let down. We are quick to point the finger. We are quick to say, they should know better. We become judges, sitting on a high bench and looking down at the world's errors. It feels good in a way. It makes us feel like we are on the right side of things. The Apostle Paul saw this same problem thousands of years ago. He wrote about it in a letter to the church in Rome. He saw people who were very proud of their beliefs. They knew the rules. They loved to teach others about right and wrong. But their own lives did not match their words. Paul asked them a series of sharp questions. He said, "You who preach that a man should not steal, do you steal?" It was a powerful challenge. He was holding up a mirror to them. He was asking them to look at their own actions before they dared to judge someone else. It is a question that we should all ask ourselves today. Think about it in our own lives. We tell our children to be kind, but are we always kind to the person on the phone? We complain about a coworker who is always late, but do we always arrive on time ourselves? We get upset when someone tells a small lie, but have we ever stretched the truth to our own advantage? The finger we point at others has a way of turning back toward us. For every fault we find in someone else, there is often a similar, hidden fault within our own hearts. It is a humbling thought. It reminds us that we are all imperfect. This is not to say that we should ignore right and wrong. Not at all. Standards are important. Integrity is essential. But the starting point for building a better world is not by fixing everyone else. The starting point is with ourselves. Before we rush to correct our neighbor, we must first pause and examine our own life. Are we living up to the standards that we expect from others? Are our words and our actions telling the same story? If we are honest, we will often find that we have our own work to do. We must be willing to clean our own house before we tell someone else how to sweep theirs. Jesus told a simple story to make this very point. It is a story about a man with a giant log in his own eye. This man walks up to his friend. He sees a tiny speck of sawdust in his friend's eye. The man says, "Let me help you get that speck out of your eye." Can you picture it? A man with a huge piece of wood sticking out of his face is trying to perform delicate surgery on his friend's eyeball. It is a ridiculous image. It is meant to be. Jesus used this funny picture to teach a very serious lesson about hypocrisy. The message is impossible to miss. How can we possibly see clearly to help someone else when our own vision is blocked by a much bigger problem? The log in our eye represents our own faults, our own sins, our own secret hypocrisies. The speck of sawdust represents the smaller faults we so easily see in others. We focus on the tiny speck because it stops us from having to deal with the giant log. It is a distraction. Judging others is often easier than facing the truth about ourselves. It is a way to feel superior without actually having to be better. We all have logs. Maybe your log is pride. Maybe it is anger. Maybe it is envy or impatience. These are the big, heavy things that weigh us down and cloud our judgment. We might not even notice them anymore. We have gotten so used to carrying them around that they feel normal. But other people see them. And when we try to point out their tiny specks of sawdust, they just see the giant log in our own eye. Our advice sounds hollow. Our criticism sounds unfair. Our words lose all their power because our lives tell a different story. So what should we do? The answer is simple, but it is not easy. We must first deal with the log. We have to be honest with ourselves. We need to look in the mirror and see the truth. We need to admit our own failings. We need to ask for forgiveness and help. This is an act of humility. It is the first step toward genuine integrity. Only when we have begun the hard work of removing our own log can we see clearly enough to truly help anyone else. And by then, we will probably approach them with a lot more grace and a lot less judgment. So how do we move forward? We must choose a better way to live. This way is built on a foundation of integrity. It is about making sure our actions align with our beliefs. It is about practicing what we preach. This is not about being perfect. No one is perfect. We will all make mistakes, we will all stumble and fall, but it is about the direction we are headed. It is about a sincere effort to live out the values we claim to hold dear. It is about being the same person in private that we are in public. This is the heart of a life well lived. Think of the power of a good example. We are all influenced by the people we admire. A coach who pushes his team to work hard and also stays late to work out himself earns their respect. A parent who teaches their children about honesty and then returns extra change to a cashier teaches a lesson that words alone never could. People are watching us, our children, our friends, our co-workers. They hear what we say, but they pay much more attention to what we do. When our lives match our words, we become a quiet force for good in the world. Our example can inspire others more than any speech ever could. Let us return to that university with the copied rulebook. Imagine if they had handled it differently. Imagine if, instead of just quietly fixing it, the president had made a public statement. Imagine if he had said, "We made a mistake. We failed to live up to our own standards of academic integrity. We are sorry, and we will do better." That act of humility would have taught a more powerful lesson about honesty than any rule in a handbook. It would have shown that integrity is not about never failing. It is about how we respond when we do. Therefore, let us all take a moment for quiet reflection. Let us look inward before we look outward. Let us ask ourselves the hard questions. Are we practicing what we preach? Are we living a life that is worthy of imitation? Let us focus on removing the logs from our own eyes. Let us strive to be people of our word. When we do this, we not only improve ourselves, but we also create a more gracious and honest world for everyone. Let your life be your message. Let your actions speak louder than your words. Set an example that others will want to follow.